Do any of you folks remember Shoe0nhead? You know, that right-winger who during Gamergate claimed to be left-wing, and who quite a few major YouTube liberals in 2017 and 2018 said changed, even though she never once recanted her right-wing beliefs or her friendship with Lauren Southern? I bring this up because, while she's not as active as she was 10 years ago, she's still around. And she's weighing in on Charlie Kirk's assassination. Full disclosure, I won't be saying that many nice things about Charlie in this video, as I think he's a far-right fascist who tried to make the world a worse place, and I'll be using a few quotes from Charlie himself to provide context as to why. All I'll say is that even if you don't think Charlie deserved to die, I don't like how his legacy is being whitewashed to portray him as more of a moderate conservative and a voice of reason when he was anything but.
On September 10th, Charlie Kirk was giving a talk at Utah Valley University, and out of nowhere he was shot dead, live, in front of a bunch of college kids, in front of his wife, and his 2 children. And I don't think the country is ever going to be the same. Not only because of this horrific tragedy, but because of everything that followed. The dark, disturbing realization that we may not be on the same page as our coworkers, classmates, friends, neighbors, doctors, when it comes to the issue of murder.
Does anyone else find it hypocritical that June is whining about other people having problems with the issue of murder when you consider she's friends with Lauren Southern, a far-right fascist who fired off a flare gun in the Mediterranean to prevent Doctors Without Borders from saving drowning refugees, as in, she wanted those refugees to die?
Charlie Kirk was not a healthcare CEO, he was not a powerful politician, and let me be 100% clear, I'm not saying this to say that it's okay when those people are murdered. My point is that those are positions of power that most people cannot relate to. Like, the average person is just so far removed from that world. But I think what happened to Charlie is hitting differently because, like I said on Twitter, he was just a guy.
I disagree with the notion that Charlie Kirk was just a regular guy. Sure, he might not have been a healthcare CEO or a powerful politician, but he was the co-founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, the largest conservative student organization in the United States, meaning he came from a position of power.
Now, don't get me wrong, Charlie Kirk had many bad takes over the years. Like, for example, the 2 most popular quotes I see people posting are the one where he advocated for stoning gays and black women are too stupid to be pilots. But guess what? Both those things, the 2 most popular quotes people are posting to justify this guy being murdered, are out of context.
Kirk's bigotry wasn't just bad takes. It was bigotry, and the kind that could get people killed. As for context, the first instance she brings up was in response to a Miss Rachel video, where she cites Love Thy Neighbor to justify why she's LGBTQ+, despite being a Christian and saying Pride Month is good. Kirk cited Leviticus 20:13, though he claimed it was Leviticus 18, to say that stoning gays was part of God's design. I should also mention that during that same podcast, he called being gay an error and compared it to being an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Yeah, and so it's very simple. So how do you love somebody? You love them so much to correct their error.
Yeah.
And so let's just, take the pride conversation out because people think it's an identification, which it's not, it's just sexual behavior. But it's, if you meet an alcoholic or you meet a drug addict, do you affirm their struggle? No. You say, you're better than this. Let's get you free from that. Let's get you free from that activity.
As for the second example that June brought up, keep in mind that Charlie Kirk is a man who called MLK Jr. a horrible person and argued that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake. So it wouldn't be surprising that Kirk has racist views. And those 2 comments weren't the only examples. Literally seconds before Kirk was killed, he conflated gun violence in America with gang violence. And let's not forget when he called George Floyd a scumbag and then listed debunked claims as to why Floyd, a man who also had a wife and children, didn't deserve any empathy.
On May 25th, 2020, up in Minneapolis, a cell phone video changed the trajectory of our entire nation in this state. The reason why our tour is called the CRT Tour is because of George Floyd's death and the misinterpretation of that. And I'm not going to go on this endless soapbox defending Derek Chauvin. I think he's kind of not a great person. But I am also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag. Now, does that mean it deserves to die? That's 2 totally different things. Of course not. But the idea that someone who had 10 times the legal limit of fentanyl was illegally counterfeiting trading counterfeit currencies, was resisting arrest and previously put a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, who then dies with, according to the first medical examination for the Hennepin County Examiner, said he died due to asphyxiation or a drug overdose. The second, the medical examination said it was due to suffocation or due to the knee on the neck, that somehow we must say, you know what? Let's profoundly restructure society. And that's what happened.
Sure, Kirk himself did say in that clip that Floyd didn't deserve to die, but it still doesn't paint him in a good light when he listed a series of accusations of Floyd's criminal history which have been debunked 80 miles from where Floyd was murdered, in front of a mostly white audience.
There are many things he said that I disagree with. There are many things he said that I think are bad. Who cares? It is just a fact that nothing he said warranted his life being taken away. This is America. We have freedom of speech here. Unless you criticize a certain country, but for the most part, we have freedom of speech here.
I was disappointed when, as June pointed out later in this video, she filmed this on September 14th, because the past week, several people who have criticized Kirk ended up losing their jobs and even being arrested for criticizing Charlie Kirk. Many of them even said, I don't agree that Kirk should have been killed. However, here's some context as to why his death shouldn't be mourned either. Given how Jimmy Kimmel was fired for basically this exact same sentiment, despite not naming Kirk at all, I would have loved to have heard what June thought about that, and how that was a violation of freedom of speech. Looking through her Twitter account as of September 19th, she's unusually quiet about this. I wonder why.
So after detaining not just one wrong guy, but two wrong guys, the FBI finally got the shooter. Only because his own father turned him in. I guess they were just too f***ing busy not releasing the Epstein files to catch a political assassin.
Listing off a left-wing talking point of wanting the FBI to release the Epstein files, which they should, doesn't change the fact that when it comes to social issues, June is right-wing.
A lot of people were saying that the shooter was a groyper, which is a far-right fan of the streamer Nick Fuentes, and I have no f***ing idea where that came from. I'm gonna be so honest, I have seen no actual proof of this.
I mean, there are quite a few factions within MAGA that hate each other almost as much as they hate the left. Charlie Kirk, for instance, was mainstream MAGA, whereas Nick Fuentes was part of the Groyper faction, who are far more openly Nazi. Now, the Groypers hated Charlie Kirk, so much to the point where they went to Kirk's events and spewed even more hateful rhetoric while claiming Kirk sold out. June then attempts to debunk the claims that Tyler Robinson was far right, to justify her argument as to why he was actually a leftist, and that the left are disgusting for celebrating Kirk's death. But given the evidence that was available at the time, including how Tyler went to Dixie Electrical College in Utah, a state not known for being left-wing, under an electrical apprenticeship, it wasn't surprising why many people thought he was a groyper.
One person may have pulled the trigger, but then we saw the reaction of many.
Is June really acting like it's the people who are celebrating the death of a man whose rhetoric played a role in making the world a worse place to live is worse than the Nazi whose rhetoric played a role in making the world a worse place to live? Because there's countless amount of evidence of right-wingers celebrating whenever their opponents are killed. See the assassination of Melissa Hortman earlier this year, which again, June was unusually quiet about.
Some of these people posting with their full names and faces, with hundreds and thousands of likes. Thousands of tweets celebrating it with 500,000 likes. And it's important to remember that all of those likes are a real person. Millions of people in this country apparently believe the acceptable response to speech they don't like is murder. This wasn't just a bunch of fringe blue hair SJWs or whatever. They were teachers, professors, doctors, HR workers, healthcare workers, nurses, pediatricians, people who work with kids, people's classmates, roommates.
June really can't help herself when she listed off blue-haired SJWs. But yeah, nothing to see here, folks. Just June listing off a list of professions of people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death in the hopes that they'll get fired or arrested.
They are teachers showing our children the gory, horrifying video of Charlie's murder on repeat.
The last time that in Belarus they used capital execution here was in 2019, and it was by firearm.
Yeah, that's how you should. By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised.
Well, this can't be right, can it? The last execution in France was guillotine in 1977.
100% true. They used the guillotine.
Until
the whole way.
77?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
There's videotape of it.
Honestly, that's like what we should be doing. And I agree. It should be public.
And
it should be public
televised.
square.
By the way, you could fund
force
the
kids
government
to watch it.
You could have like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And no, I'm not kidding. By the way, I would totally tune in to see some pedo get their head chopped off. Convicted by a jury.
By the way,
peers.
that's going to get
No,
called
I'm talking about a real thing. I'm not talking
All
about
executions in Belarus are by firearm. That's not a choice or anything.
Andrew's saying don't make kids watch it, and I think the
Well, I
absolute
think at a
opposite.
certain age, it's an initiation.
16, if you can drive, you can
No,
watch
but hold
it.
on.
Not
You
even
see,
16.
If
I would
all of a
say-
sudden you look at some of these savages, like in Indiana, there was this guy that went in and killed a pregnant woman and her 3 kids.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. I want to see him on a public block and get him be publicly executed. And I think that would be justice. You think children should have, you should see it? What is the age? At what age should you start to see public executions?
16.
I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12, like
Whenever-
6th grade or so.
I have seen people on the right celebrate the death of people they disagree with. I've seen it. I remember Heather Heyer in 2017. But I also remember the whole internet, left and right, coming together to disavow and mock the few dozen people from Stormfront who were celebrating her death. This is different. It's never been like this before. It's never been this much. It's never been this brazen.
I mean, she's not wrong that people on the right celebrate the death of people they disagree with all the time. The thing is, I rarely see conservatives call out people they disagree with being killed. Or if they do, they follow up with bringing up arguments as to why they're terrible people. Similar to what Charlie Kirk himself did regarding George Floyd that I brought up earlier.
The smug, unearned confidence these people have to be openly sociopathic with their full name and face because they live under the pathetic delusion of being on the right side of history needs to end. They will blame you for your death because words are violence.
Violence? You mean like the same violence the right supported when Melissa Hortman was murdered? The same violence the right supported when Paul Pelosi was attacked in his home? I should also mention, the latter is an instance of violence in which Charlie Kirk told his supporters to pay the bail of the person who committed the assault on Paul Pelosi.
Top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. Of course you should reject any link. Why is the Republican Party, why is the conservative movement to blame for gay schizophrenic nudists that are hemp jewelry makers breaking into somebody's home, or maybe not breaking into somebody's home? Why are we to blame for that exactly? And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000.
Also, I'm going to be the one to point it out because of course I am. I saw nobody else do it. Why are most of them women? Most of the people celebrating are women. Like, it's a good, like, 80-20 ratio all over the internet. What is going on, ladies?
That is interesting. Why are women celebrating the death of a man who argued birth control screws up women's brains and that women have the Jezebel spirit, whining that they have no interest in getting married?
At the end of the day, this is all the inevitable conclusion of the punch a Nazi thing from like 2017. Do you guys remember that? We always knew it was a slippery slope. That's why we were against it. And they always say this dumb shit like, if you don't want to be called a Nazi, stop being a Nazi.
How dare people accuse a man who argued that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake, argued that Muslims came to America to destabilize Western civilization, argued repeatedly for the heavily debunked Great Replacement theory, and asked for white people to organize border militias on the southern border a Nazi.
They don't kill you because you're a Nazi. They call you a Nazi so they can kill you.
I'm not calling Kirk a Nazi because he had differences in opinions from me. His favorite pizza flavor could be different than mine, and that wouldn't be enough for me to call him a Nazi. I am, however, calling him a Nazi because he argued that immigrants are coming from the Middle East and Latin America to replace white people and that white people should mobilize into militias. I'm calling him a Nazi because he argued that the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended discrimination and segregation, or at least should have ended segregation and discrimination, was a mistake. I'm calling him a Nazi because, despite Kirk's support for Israel, something both June and I disagree with, he has spewed anti-Semitic rhetoric countless times.
The last few days after what happened, I kept going to every single, like, lefty, liberal, left-wing person I know and, like, checking out what they have been saying about this. And besides maybe like 4 or 5, every single one was being an unhinged psychopath about this. Or saying some backhanded shit like, this is why we need gun control.
I'm glad you brought up gun control. Charlie Kirk had several far-right beliefs, but the one he repeated proudly was his defense of the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. For Kirk, that was the most important amendment, even more than the first.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe. So then how do you reduce? Very simple. People say, oh, Charlie, how do you stop school shootings? I don't know. How did we stop shootings at baseball games? Because we have armed guards outside of baseball games. That's why. How did we stop all the shootings at airports? We have armed guards outside of airports. How do we stop all the shootings at banks? We have armed guards outside of banks. How do we stop all the shootings at gun shows? Notice there's not a lot of mass shootings at gun shows. There's all these guns because everyone's armed.
The irony of these claims is that Charlie Kirk was murdered at a college campus in Utah, a Republican state which allows people to open carry, meaning he was in a Republican state which allowed people to open carry, and I can assume there are quite a few people open carrying at that campus, and he still ended up dying from gun violence. The same day Kirk was killed, there was another school shooting at Evergreen High School in Colorado. I can guarantee that if Kirk survived his assassination, his views about gun deaths wouldn't have changed. To Charlie Kirk, the deaths of those students, many of whom had families of their own, would have been considered unfortunate but worth it to have a Second Amendment.
I'm friends with people who are friends with Charlie, and I see how they are completely broken about this. Seeing them like this, and then at the same time my other friends posting shit like, rip bozo. It's just sick. It's just sick shit.
Is it wrong that I have no sympathy or empathy for Charlie Kirk, given how Kirk himself viewed empathy as a new age term that does a lot of damage?
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up new age term that does a lot of damage.
If anything, I'm doing more to honor Charlie's legacy by treating him with no empathy whatsoever, given how his lack of empathy is how he would have treated other people he hated when they died.
Personally, I would rather live in a world full of Charlie Kirks who would sit down and debate than a world full of people who agree with me but would murder people who don't.
Yes. That's exactly what this world needs more of. A man who goes to college campuses to explain to students that marginalized people groups are the real oppressors, at a time when violence towards those same groups are at an all-time high. We need more men who build their legacies off spreading bigotry and hatred.
The way we view death now is just crazy, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with the desensitization, in part thanks to the internet. You used to have to go out of your way to see gore and stuff like that, and now you're just scrolling through Twitter and you see someone set on fire if someone gets stabbed on a train. And when someone like Charlie dies, it's not even real to people anymore. Like, it's like a movie or show. Oh, that character died? Good, I hated that character. Like, no, that was a real human being with a family and kids, actually.
You're right. Charlie was a human being with a family. So was George Floyd, who Charlie Kirk called a scumbag. So was Melissa Hortman. So were the countless children who were killed in school shootings every day somewhere in this country, due in large part because of the policy advocated by people like Charlie Kirk. I have more empathy for them and their families than I do for Charlie Kirk.
You can't say to these people who are celebrating this and justifying this, you can't say, what if that was your dad or your brother getting killed for their opinions, because they've already cut those people off. They've already cut those people off out of their lives. And posting videos and pictures of Charlie's wife and young kids will not move these people at all, because they hate their lives.
If there's anyone in Charlie Kirk's family that I do feel sorry for, it would be his children. But not for the reasons you would think. Yes, it's sad that they're going to grow up without their father, but I don't think the fascist lifestyle that Kirk would have provided was a healthy way to grow up. Given how Kirk's wife has shown that she is also a fascist who has called for bloodlust, I feel like someone who knows how to take care of children who isn't a fascist should get them out of there and move them to a safer and healthier home, preferably one that isn't fascist. I have no sympathy for Kirk's wife, and I sure as hell don't have any sympathy for Kirk himself.
And for the people who will come at me in a blind rage with a list of all of Charlie Kirk's, biggest hits to convince me that I should hate him and should not mourn him. If you thought what Charlie Kirk said is wrong, you could have debated him. He was one of the few people left willing to do that, and now he's gone.
Anyone else find it creepy that a grown man was going to college campuses at a time when violence towards marginalized groups was at an all-time high to convince the students at those universities that those same marginalized groups were actually the oppressors? Also, let's not pretend that Charlie Kirk was this great debater. During Free Speech Week in 2017, Kirk made fun of the idea of safe spaces by wearing a diaper. Given the reaction to it online, you can easily say that whatever Charlie Kirk was intending backfired on him.
Like, even from a political standpoint, not even a personal human standpoint, why are you celebrating, like, the most popular college Gen Z political pundit dying?
Minor nitpick, but Charlie Kirk isn't Gen Z. He's a younger millennial. I know this because several conservatives have mentioned that at age 31, he died at a young age, even though there were countless people of color who were murdered by police officers at much younger ages.
I just hope for the sake of this country that political violence does not become normalized, does not become a thing.
Unfortunately, June, political violence has already been normalized. Even before Charlie Kirk's death, the arrests on college campuses protesting the U.S. supplying Israel's genocide are an act of political violence. Stephen Miller encouraging ICE to go after immigrants working at Home Depots and 7-Elevens is an act of political violence. Deporting people to concentration camps like Sikot, Guantanamo Bay, and Alligator Auschwitz is an act of political violence. Saying that the homeless should be euthanized on Fox News is an act of political violence. The fact that, after Brian Kilmeade said this, someone tried murdering homeless people at their encampments in Minneapolis shows that words have consequences. So, that was Shoe0nhead. Given how we live in a world where Bering, Benny Johnson, and Misha Petrov also made videos about the assassination, I can't bring myself to call this the worst video about Charlie's death. That being said, while it's not the worst video about the assassination, I still thought it was a bad video. Besides the fact that June spent over 23 minutes defending a far-right fascist, there are several moments in the video that felt like pointless filler, such as when June listed everything she was accused of, moments where I questioned whether June truly changed, such as mentioning she went to a TPUSA event and didn't mock it, and mentioning how Kyle Rittenhouse killed in self-defense compared to Charlie Kirk's killer. In a way, this video is almost like Charlie Kirk himself. He might not have been furthest to the right or the most violent, but that doesn't mean he wasn't dangerous. Like I mentioned earlier, words have consequences. He built his legacy on bigotry and hatred and actively tried to make the world a worse place to live. Everything I mentioned in this video was only a small fraction of the things Charlie Kirk said and did. For other things he said, you can find them in the description below. Until next time, I'm the Frustrated Historian. Thank you all for watching.